Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to share a story that will warm your heart and remind you of the incredible power of kindness, love, and human connection. It's about a young man who, on a simple walk down a quiet hill, meets an elderly woman living alone, and what starts as a request for a cup of water turns into a life-changing bond. This story shows how a single act of generosity can bridge generations, heal loneliness, and create a family where you least expect it. Stick around, because by the end, you'll understand that sometimes strangers have the power to become the family we've always longed for, and that love and compassion can truly change lives. The afternoon sun was sliding behind the hills, painting the sky in fading shades of gold and rose. The air was dry, still carrying the warmth of the day. A young man named Ethan Miller trudged slowly down a dusty path, his throat burning from thirst. He had been walking for hours, the long stretch of country road behind him quiet and deserted. His car had broken down 2 miles uphill, and with no one passing by, he decided to walk down the valley in search of water or help. His lips were dry, his shirt clinging to his back with sweat, but his spirit was calm. He had always believed that kindness could be found in the most unexpected corners of the world. As he reached the edge of a small clearing, he spotted a little wooden cottage standing alone at the foot of the hill. Smoke drifted lazily from its chimney, and a white fence, half fallen in places, surrounded a garden of tall green plants. The scent of herbs floated in the air. There was something peaceful, almost sacred about the place. An elderly woman was sitting on the porch in an old rocking chair, her gray hair tied neatly behind her head. She held a ball of yarn in her lap and a pair of knitting needles that clicked softly in rhythm. Ethan hesitated for a moment, brushing the dust off his jeans, and then approached with a shy smile. "Grandma, are you busy?" he asked gently, his voice carrying the tone of someone who didn't want to intrude. The woman looked up, her wrinkled face glowing with warmth. "No, dear," she said softly, setting her knitting aside. "What is it?" Ethan took a slow breath, embarrassed by his need. "I came down from the hill, and there was no water along the way. Could I please have a little water from your home?" Her smile deepened, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "Of course, dear. Water is for everyone. Sit down, and I'll get it for you." As she rose from her chair, she moved slowly, her joints stiff but steady. Ethan immediately stepped forward. "Let me help you, Grandma," he said. She chuckled gently. "Be careful," he said again out of habit, and she laughed, the sound like a warm melody. "I'm used to it," she replied. "I live alone, so I have to handle everything myself." He looked surprised. "You live here all alone? What about Grandpa?" Her smile faded for a moment, replaced by a shadow of memory. "Now it's just me," she said quietly. "He passed away many years ago." Ethan's voice softened. "Don't your children come to see you?" Her eyes turned misty. "I never had any children, dear. Life just went on, and no one ever called me their own." The silence that followed was gentle, not awkward, but filled with unspoken emotion. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He hadn't meant to touch an old wound. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he said softly. "I didn't mean to make you sad." She smiled again, wiping a tear before it fell. "It's all right, dear. I've been lonely for so long, but your visit has made my heart lighter. It feels like someone is speaking to me with love for the first time in a long while." Her words touched him deeply. Ethan wasn't sure why, but something inside him felt connected to her, like fate had guided his broken car to this lonely house. He took the glass of water she poured for him, drinking slowly, savoring the coolness that seemed to wash away not just his thirst, but something deeper, his own quiet exhaustion from life. "How old are you, Grandma?" he asked with a small grin. She chuckled proudly. 84, but my heart is still young." He laughed. "You're amazing, Grandma. How's your health?" "I grow my own vegetables and eat them," she said. "I have no sickness, only the years that come with age." Ethan smiled, admiration in his eyes. "You're so strong. My car's parked down the hill. I'll be back soon and then we can talk more." The woman looked puzzled but nodded kindly. "All right, dear. Be careful." When Ethan disappeared down the path, she stood on her porch and watched until he was out of sight. A faint smile lingered on her lips. For a moment, the house no longer felt as silent as it usually did. There was laughter in the air again, and she could almost hear her late husband's voice teasing her gently. "You always wanted grandchildren, didn't you, Margaret?" About an hour later, the sun had dipped lower, and the wind had grown cooler. The old woman, Margaret Thompson, had gone back to her knitting when she heard the sound of footsteps again. Looking up, she saw Ethan returning, this time carrying several large grocery bags in his hands. Her eyes widened in surprise. "So many things for me?" He smiled. "I brought some oil, rice, and milk. Just a few things to make your life a bit easier. It's not much, but it comes from my heart." She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. "Oh dear, I only gave you a cup of water, and you've given me so much in return." He set the bags on her porch and gently took her hands in his. "Grandma, you didn't just give me water. You gave me life. I was a stranger, and you showed me a mother's love. You're not alone anymore. I'm your grandson now." Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to speak, but her voice trembled. "You remind me of the son I never had," she whispered. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small white envelope, pressing it into her hand. "What's this, dear?" she asked. He smiled softly. "This isn't payment for water. It's a gift of love." Her fingers shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a check, enough money to keep her comfortable for years. Her lips quivered and tears ran freely down her face. "May God bless you, dear," she said, gripping his hands tightly. "May your life always be full of light." Ethan looked around at the quiet yard, the little garden she tended with her own hands, and the small house that stood like a lonely witness of time. "You've built a world here with love, Grandma," he said. "You deserve more than just survival. You deserve peace." She smiled faintly. "Peace comes with gratitude, dear, and I have plenty of that now." Over the following weeks, Ethan returned again and again to the little cottage by the hill. What began as a visit to offer company slowly became a part of his life. Every weekend he drove from the city, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with flowers, and sometimes with nothing more than a smile and a heart full of warmth. The first few times, Margaret tried to insist that he didn't need to keep bringing her things, but Ethan would laugh and say, "You gave me something I didn't even know I needed, Grandma. You gave me family." Their conversations stretched long into the afternoons. She told him about her childhood on a small farm, about how she and her late husband, George, had built the house with their own hands. George had been a carpenter, a patient man with a loud laugh and a deep love for life. Together they had dreamed of raising children, but fate had other plans. When Margaret was in her 30s, she lost her ability to conceive after an illness. For a long time, she had struggled with the quiet pain of emptiness, watching neighbors raise their children and grandchildren while she and George grew old together in their small corner of the world. After George passed away 12 years earlier, the house had become silent, almost painfully so. The days were long, the nights longer. Her only companions were the garden she tended and the old radio that sometimes played soft country songs in the background. But since Ethan had shown up at her doorstep, it was as if spring had returned to her heart. She smiled more, her voice grew livelier, and even her step became lighter. Ethan, too, was changing in ways he hadn't expected. He was a young engineer working for a tech company in the city, but his life there had always felt mechanical: work, bills, deadlines, and empty weekends. He had friends, but few who really knew his heart. After meeting Margaret, something inside him softened. Her words had a way of grounding him. She reminded him that kindness didn't need a reason, and that real wealth was measured not in money, but in moments shared. One Saturday afternoon, as he arrived with a small box of fresh peaches, he found her in the garden, kneeling beside a patch of soil, planting new seeds. "Hey, Grandma!" he called out cheerfully. "You're working too hard again." She looked up with a grin. "Oh, nonsense. A little dirt never hurt anybody." Ethan crouched beside her. "Here, let me help." Together they planted the seeds, talking about everything from weather to memories of old times. At one point, she glanced at him and said, "You know, Ethan, you remind me of my George sometimes." He had the same way of speaking, gentle but certain. He used to say that a person's true character shows in how they treat those who can do nothing for them. Ethan smiled. "Then you and George were both extraordinary people, Grandma." That night, after dinner, Ethan helped her clean up the kitchen and made her a cup of chamomile tea. They sat on the porch under a blanket of stars, the cool air brushing softly against their faces. Margaret leaned back in her chair and said, "When I was your age, I used to think happiness came from what we had. Now I know it comes from who we love and how we live." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. I think I forgot that somewhere along the way." "Then you remember it now," she said, smiling. "That's what matters." A few months later, winter crept in quietly, covering the hill in a thin veil of frost. Ethan continued his visits, sometimes bringing firewood, other times baking pies for her, though they usually ended up half-burnt. Margaret would tease him lovingly, saying, "Your wife will need patience, dear." He'd laugh and say, "Guess I'll have to find someone as patient as you, Grandma." But one chilly Sunday morning, when Ethan drove up the hill, something felt different. The air was heavy and the curtains of her little house were drawn. He knocked gently on the door, then again, louder. After a long moment, he heard the sound of slow footsteps. The door creaked open, and Margaret appeared, wrapped in a shawl. Her smile was faint, but still warm. "Ethan, my dear," she said softly, "I didn't expect you so early." He frowned. "Are you all right, Grandma? You look tired." "I'm fine, just a little under the weather," she said. "Old bones get weary in the cold." He helped her back to her chair and covered her with a blanket. "Did you eat anything?" "Not yet," she admitted. "I wasn't hungry." Ethan's heart ached. He made her some soup and sat beside her as she ate, though she only managed a few spoonfuls. They talked quietly for a while until she reached out and held his hand. "Ethan," she whispered, "promise me something." "Anything, Grandma," he said, his voice gentle. "When I'm gone," she continued, "don't be sad. Promise you'll keep living with kindness and keep visiting this hill once in a while. I don't want it to be forgotten." He swallowed hard. "Don't talk like that. You're not going anywhere." She smiled faintly. "We all go somewhere, dear, but love stays." A few weeks later, Ethan received a call from a neighbor who lived a mile away. Margaret had passed away in her sleep. The news of Margaret's passing hit Ethan harder than he could ever have imagined. For hours after receiving the call, he sat in silence on his apartment couch, the world around him blurring into meaningless noise. He had lost people before, friends who drifted away, a father who was more shadow than presence. But this was different. Losing Margaret felt like losing a piece of his own heart. She had stepped into his life like sunlight through a storm, warming places he hadn't even realized had grown cold. The next morning, he drove back to the hill, his chest heavy with grief. The air was crisp and still, the sky overcast. As he pulled into the familiar dirt path, he could almost hear her voice welcoming him. "There you are, dear. I was just about to make some tea." But the house was quiet now, its wooden porch empty except for the rocking chair swaying faintly in the breeze. Inside, everything was neat and exactly as she'd left it. The small table by the window still held her knitting basket, and the scent of lavender hung in the air. On the kitchen counter was a folded note with his name written in her graceful, shaky handwriting. "To my dear grandson, Ethan." His hands trembled as he opened it. "My dear Ethan, if you are reading this, it means my time here has ended, and I have gone home to where your grandpa George has been waiting. Don't let sadness fill your heart, my boy. You brought me joy in my final days, joy I never thought I would feel again. You gave me the gift of family, something I had long given up hoping for. Every time you visited, every smile, every laugh, it reminded me that life is never truly lonely when love is shared. You must know that your kindness has left its mark on me, and I hope my love will do the same for you. I've left something for you in the drawer of my nightstand. It's nothing grand, but it carries the story of my life and the house you made a home again. Please, keep it, not out of duty, but out of love. Be good, my dear. Be kind. And never stop stopping for strangers in need of water. With all my love, Grandma Margaret. Tears streamed down his face as he read her words over and over. He walked slowly into her bedroom, the air heavy with her presence. On the nightstand beside her bed was a small wooden box carved with delicate flowers. Inside, he found a set of old photographs, Margaret and George as a young couple, smiling in front of the same house, a faded wedding picture, a photo of Margaret sitting in that same rocking chair, holding a kitten. Beneath the photos was a yellowed envelope with his name written again. Inside was a property deed. She had signed the house over to him. Ethan's knees went weak as he sank onto the bed, clutching the papers. She had left him everything, not because she owed him anything, but because she wanted him to have a place in the world that would remind him of kindness, warmth, and love that expected nothing in return. For the next several months, Ethan spent his weekends fixing up the cottage. He repainted the walls, repaired the old fence, and replanted her garden with new seeds. Every corner of the place still carried her spirit. The rocking chair remained on the porch, and her picture hung above the fireplace. Word spread quickly through the small community. Neighbors who had once only waved from a distance began to visit again, bringing pies, stories, and memories of the woman they had quietly admired for years. One of them, Mrs. Parker, told Ethan, "Margaret always said she wasn't afraid of dying. She just didn't want to be forgotten. I think she'd be happy knowing you're here now." Ethan smiled. "She'll never be forgotten," he said. 2 years later, the cottage on the hill had become something more than just a home. Ethan turned it into a small rest stop for travelers and hikers who often passed through the valley. He named it Grandma's Well. There was a wooden sign by the gate that read, "Water is for everyone." The place became known for its free water, warm meals, and open porch. Ethan kept a jug of cold water outside every morning, just like Margaret once had. People from all walks of life came by, lost travelers, weary workers, families on road trips. One summer afternoon, a little boy ran up the hill, his face flushed from the heat. He stopped in front of the porch and asked shyly, "Sir, can I have some water?" Ethan smiled, his heart swelling at the memory the words stirred. "Of course, son. Water is for everyone." As he poured the boy a glass, the child's mother approached, thanking him. Ethan waved it off kindly. "Don't mention it," he said. "I once got a drink of water from someone who changed my life. I'm just passing it on." When they left, Ethan sat back in the rocking chair and looked toward the sunset. The light hit the hills just the way it had the day he first met her. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I kept my promise, Grandma." A gentle breeze swept across the porch, making the chimes above the door sing softly. For a moment, he could almost hear her laughter again, warm, gentle, and timeless. He looked out over the garden, now blooming in full color, and thought of how love, once given, never truly fades. It travels through people, through gestures, through every cup of water shared on a hot day. That night, as the stars appeared one by one, Ethan sat beneath them, the house glowing softly behind him. He knew Margaret was still there, in the rustle of the leaves, the hum of the night, and the peace in his heart. She hadn't just given him a home, she had given him purpose. And so, the boy who had once come down the hill thirsty had found something far greater than water. He had found family, meaning, and the kind of love that lasts beyond a lifetime. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Remember, even small acts of kindness can change someone's life forever. Share this story with someone who needs a little warmth today, and let's keep spreading love, hope, and compassion. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family so you don't miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart and comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting stories videos.